No home runs on this podcast. We work station to station. I'm back with my regular battery mate, Dustin, to discuss the last week of the Jays' regular season. And Dustin, it was a bit of a roller coaster.
How could it be any different with the 2023 Blue Jays? Certainly, it was a roller coaster of a season and a roller coaster final week, but we did it. We're in, and I'm excited. I think we got a lot of promise here and a lot to look forward to for the next little while.
Well, we'll talk about kind of how this all shook down in a moment, but we'll kind of go through the games, just kind of blow by blow. We would normally do a episode after the Yankee series, but really not a whole lot happened in that
Mhm.
series. So we'll just kind of quickly go through this. Game number one, Tuesday night, was a 2-0 loss. This game actually goes into the top of the ninth inning, where Jordan Romano gives up a 2-run home run to Austin Wells, and that pretty much settles that one. Dustin, uh, do you have any concerns about Jordan Romano going into the playoffs?
A tiny bit, to be honest. He hasn't been very good lately. Um, I don't know if it's the fingernail thing or just some little jitters or just the kinds of things that happen with relief pitchers is they'll have a little bit of slumps. It's at a bad time if that's the case, but I'm not too worried about it. I think if they need to make a move and switch him with Jordan Hicks, I think they can do that. um, there's a lot of good options in that pen, and they'll have him on a maybe a shorter leash than usual.
Well, I was actually listening to the at the Letters podcast, and one of the things they talked about was that Jordan Romano, when he comes out, he doesn't seem to have the velocity right away,
Hmm.
and that basically proves problematic. Is that's kind of what happens is he gives up a home run in the first or second at bat, and gives up a run or two in that case, and that puts him behind, and then he's basically playing catch up the rest of the inning, trying to make up outs, and he'll get his velocity up throughout the inning, but that seems to be a problem. Now, over the weekend, they were able to get him in to an inning, and I think it was kind of a bring me up confidence inning, and so I don't think he's in the best of place right now, but uh, I think he's in a little bit better place than he was maybe a week and a half ago.
Yeah, certainly. I think, yeah, I noticed that too. They kind of brought him in, and it seemed like they were just trying to get him some, yeah, confidence outs here. We'll see. I mean, I think, like I said, there's a lot of options in that bullpen, and I'm not too worried about the back end of the bullpen too much here.
Well, I'm gonna just talk about game two as well, Dustin. I think one of the common themes of this Jays season is just kind of either bad luck or just unfortunate uh, outcomes, and so the Jays have this kind of, I guess, heartbreaking late inning loss in game number one,
Hmm.
and guess who's up next? Garrett Cole in game number two. And
Right.
so, this seems to be just kind of emblematic of this season where, something is, oh, it's unfortunate. And then the next day you just have, oh, only the best pitcher in the American League going, and the chances of winning probably not good. And that quickly, they do end up going on to lose that game 6-0. Garrett Cole does pitch a complete game shutout. But I was talking with Rob at work, and I'm like, this is just so Jays, where it's like they give up an unfortunate home run, lose a game right at the end, and then they really have no chance to win the series because of the pitching matchup in the next game.
Yeah, I mean, Garrett Cole's start was the one that I had sort of eyed as the one that they probably would have had a hardest time to win, and turned out to be true. I mean, and again, Judge, hits a home run, and Stanton singles. Like they just kind of nibbled away, 2 runs, 2 runs, 2 runs. and they couldn't get anything against Cole. And even when they did kind of get a hit here or there, it's meaningless.
Yeah, and I don't know, like early in the week, getting a win on the board in this series would have been nice, and if it was in game one, that would have been great. Obviously, it didn't happen in game two either. I, I don't know. Rob had sent a message about during that game, like why did they pitch to Judge? And I would completely agree. This is you know, this is a slimy dead fish of a team in the New York Yankees, and with one good player really. Giancarlo Stanton can run into one every now and then, and
Yeah,
his exit. I think he hit a single with an exit velocity of like 119 or something. It's like
yeah.
the guy can, when he gets a hold of the ball, he can do damage. But really, Aaron Judge is really the straw that stirs that drink, and he hits not one but two home runs. And I looked at both, I guess, at bats. The first at bat, I don't know if it's as egregious. It was a outside fastball that he basically takes to the opposite field. I still agree you probably shouldn't have pitched to him. But the second home run, and of course, by this time the Jays are down, so I guess it doesn't really matter too much. But it was a Trevor Richards hanging changeup, inside hanging changeup that he just laces. So I I don't know. Like, maybe give your thoughts on just pitching to Judge in general in this case.
Well, it's absolutely, you got to do it sometimes. You can't walk him every time he gets up there. But I mean, when the game's tight, when it's close, I mean, pitching to him is a little bit of a mistake. I think we saw Bassett in the third game, pitch to him fairly well. I think the key to getting him out is getting him inside, make him feel uncomfortable. It seems like just some of the ways that the games are called by the Blue Jays for him just didn't seem to make sense. Like, you say, he hit an outside fastball. I mean, that's where he kind of lives. And if he has trouble, his one hole is on the inside, and I guess that's the trouble with it is like that's a pretty hard hole to like pitch to, So it's tough. It's hard to know what to do, but what are you gonna do? Like you said, he's the one guy i on that team that can get anything done. It's hard to win a game when you score 0 runs. Two hits like happened in that game. Um, so it's all for naught. I don't know. I don't think we have to worry about it too much. The Yankees are out, um, but I think you're right. I think pitching to him is something you got to do rare, and you gotta do it like Chris Bassett did in the third game. Um, I guess we can roll into the third game there. This one was a much better game from the Jays' perspective. We saw Dalton Varsho lead it off with a home run. Matt Chapman ran into one. Biggio and you know uh, got a pretty good single that scored a couple. So they did what I think the Blue Jays need to do in the playoffs in this game, which is get to mistake pitches, nibble away, score a run or two in multiple innings, and not just hope for like the big, 4 or 5 run inning. Um, they scored one in the third, one in the fourth, one in the fifth, three in the sixth, and then let your pitching do its job. I mean, Bassett was just lights out. He hit 200 innings in this game, which is a first for him, which is great to see. I think they kind of let him come out there in, I think it was the seventh or the eighth, um, and get 2 outs to make that happen. I think that was a great job by Schneider and the team to let that happen, and a great job obviously by Bassett to like get that done. He's had sort of a little bit of an up and down season, but I mean 200 innings is nothing to sniff at. So good for him.
Well, I definitely think that was kind of I guess the theme of that game, so to speak. Obviously, the Jays win 6-0, but him hitting the 200 inning mark was definitely important. And he talked about that after the game as well, that kind of how much it kind of meant to him, and that this is kind of it's kind of a watermark where pitchers that get to 200 innings, they're quite good, and
Mhm.
not everyone does that. And just going through how he compares to the rest of the pitching staff, Barrios has 189 and two-thirds innings pitched. Gosman has 185 innings pitched, and Kikuchi 167 and two-thirds. So, he's kind of leading in that department uh, by a good margin going into the playoffs. And he's really been a workhorse kind of all year. I think he threw up a stat about the number of starts without giving up a run, and I think he was tied or up there with Garrett Cole as well. Like I think Chris Bassett, I don't know. I feel like you did say he had a bit of an up and down year. I think we're kind of underrating him a bit. Like he was well worth his $18 million this year.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think when I say that, I just mean that there's a start or two where he looked really bad, early on, but he seemed to have found it and figured it out. Maybe it was the pitch come sort of troubles early on. Um, but yeah, I mean, look, nothing to take away from him. I wouldn't be surprised if he got some Cy Young votes. I think obviously Cole's going to run away with that award this year, but I mean, he could get a second place vote or something or four. Um, so yeah, good for him. And I think the whole pitching staff has been a workhorse, as you say. I mean, I know he's the one with the most innings, but the number of games, I think I saw a stat today that the Blue Jays had four pitchers with over 30 games started this year. They're the only team in the majors to have that. I think there was only a handful of teams with three um, pitchers that did that, like maybe one or two, and then the rest had barely two pitchers that did that. So I mean that's speaks to the workhorse not only of the team and the individual pitchers, but of the the front office to like go out and seek those kinds of guys. I mean, I think we said this when Bassett was signed. We talked about well, I talked about this when Barrios was signed last year. That's why these guys I think were eyed by the front office is that they're the kinds of guys that go out there. They're very um, injury resilient and they just give you innings, and that's I think a testament to both them, the pitchers, and the front office.
Well, they've definitely built up the pitching staff. I think I mentioned that before, and all of the pitchers are coming back next year, aside of Hyunjin Ryu, and he wasn't really someone who started with the team anyway, but he is a free agent, and I don't think he'll be back. But he I think he's definitely contributed well down the stretch. Now finishing that game, the and winning that game, the Jays' magic number was reduced to two going into the Rays series. So we did knock a number off of that. So I guess not too bad from that perspective. But game number one of the Rays series, this is a really strong performance from the Blue Jays. It was 11-4 win, and I think really what we saw was just really contributors up and down the lineup. Brandon Belt came back to the lineup this week, and he looked good. So that looks like a bright spot for the playoffs. Dalton Varsho definitely with some key hits. Couple home runs this week. He actually hit the 20 home run mark, which bit down from last year, but based on where he was 3 weeks ago, I think he had a pretty good finish to the year. Of course, Kevin Biggio, he's been quite good since the All Star break, and has really solidified himself in playing every day. Matt Chapman, although maybe bit of a slow start in his return to the lineup, but he looked good in this particular game, and I think really, uh, I don't know, it was just positivity to start the weekend.
Yeah, I was really excited after this game. What it meant to getting into the playoffs, what it meant to, at the time, possibly facing Tampa Bay in the World Series. Not in the World Series, sorry, in the playoffs. And like you said, a lot of the guys that have been struggling, like Mac Chapman, you know, this is the second game and as many that he hit a home run, and it just was a really positive game. I think another really bright spot has been Brandon Belt. I was worried about him after coming back from the back injury. um, I think it was he had been hot before um, going down with that, and now he's come back, and oh, is he gonna you know be come back where he started or where he left off, and he has, so that's going to be big for this team, I think, in the playoffs. Brandon Belt is um, a guy that's been there. He's got two World Series under his belt. He's just the same guy every day, and he's gonna, I think, really be kind of a rock for this team in the playoffs, and hopefully somebody that can, you know, give us one of those, memorable moments in the playoffs, like a Bautista bat flip, or the Donaldson dash, those kinds of things. I think Belt is one of those guys that can really do that. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping that um, I'm really eyeing him as one of the MVPs of the World Series, hopefully.
Well, I think you're getting ahead of yourself there a little bit,
Not
but
World Series of
I
our playoffs. Let's say, yeah.
uh no, no,
Not that,
and I
you
would
know what
tend
I
to
mean.
agree. Yeah, no, I would tend to agree. I think also what Brandon Bell provides is a left-handed bat at the top of the order to break up all of those strong right-handed batters that we have kind of piled up there, and jamming him in the 2 or 3 spot. Uh, we'll see where he ends up, but that's you're not just going to be able to bring in a righty to face Springer, Bichette, and Guerrero. There's going to be a lefty in there too, and a decent veteran lefty bat that you're going to have to think about. And you're an opposing manager's going to have to think about it. Do what do I want to do here in this particular um, scenario, and this is why left-handed bats were sought in the offseason, and that this is why Brandon Belt was signed.
Yeah, and even if he's not, in the starting lineup because of matchups or whatever the reason might be, he's going to be a key piece off the bench. He can come in, I think, and hit a really meaningful, or at least put together a meaningful at bat late in the innings off the bench if that's what is called for him to do. Um, I guess we can move on to the next game here. So this was after that win. I think the magic number was down to one. We were all hoping um, after that game finished that Seattle would lose, and we would be in right away, but that didn't happen. So I think I was hopeful that for this game that we could put together a good showing and win it sort of on our own merits and have the team celebrate on the field in front of their fans. It wasn't to be the case though. Um, they put a good effort in, you know, uh, some key moments. Dalton Varsho, we get a home run. He'd also single in the bottom of the fourth to score two, or was it three? Anyways, either way, he would make it 3-2. He would give us the lead at that point. Um, the Rays would come back as they do, tie it up, and it would stay scoreless till the ninth. And then we got to extra innings, and the Rays did what the Rays do, and they nipped and tucked, and they hit a home run, and um, they just put it out of uh, reach for the Jays. It was a little bit upsetting, but yeah. What did you think of this game?
Well, I thought this game, was kind of fitting of the whole season in terms of like it really had us, on the edge of your seat. Magic numbers at 1. Seattle isn't really giving you any help, or I guess Texas isn't really giving you any help. Previous night, where Seattle just absolutely clobbered the Rangers, and so you come into this game, it's 4-2 in the fourth inning when a Harold Ramirez 2-run home run ties it at 4-4. And the game really stays at that point until the top of the 10th. And I think Jordan Hicks was in his second inning of work at this point. And so
Right.
he so there's, of course, the zombie runner at second. He intentionally walks a guy to I guess set up a double play. And Ramel Tapia, former Blue Jay, uh, and player who's on his, I believe, his third team this year, steps to the plate, and Jordan Hicks walks him, and so he walks him, and obviously this loads the bases. This
I don't.
this you
I
you
think you
can't do
can't do
this.
that.
You
Ronald Tapia
cannot.
walked 4 times all year. Like it seems like oh my
It's
god,
it's to be honest, like when I heard that he walked, I was
he
like,
never
this is
walks.
completely inexcusable. Uh, and we're talking about a pitcher, Jordan Hicks, regularly throw breaks the triple digit velo mark, and Ramos have you like throw it in there, right? Like if he can beat you, good on him, right? But don't you can't let him walk. You just cannot do that in that scenario. And Taylor Walls steps up a couple batters later and hits a 2 RBI single to right field, and that's really the game. And so at that point, Blue Jays Nation is really, holding their breath because at this point, without some help from the Texas Rangers, Kevin Gosman's going to have to start game 3.
Yeah, that was the big panic at the time. It was do we have to fight and claw in the game 162, burn a starter, you know, in a ahead of a 3 game series, um, just to get in.
Which
That
which we thought was going to be against the Rays, by the way.
exactly, and it's almost like it was kind of smart for the Rays to really kind of do what they can to win that game because that's what it meant. If they won that game, then they kind of forced our hand as long as Seattle lost or Seattle won rather, to burn our number one guy in game 162. That would have been a disaster.
Well, I don't think you can accuse the Tampa Bay Rays of throwing this series because they definitely, even though their fate was sealed before they showed up in Toronto because the Orioles confirmed their division win, but
Mhm.
they threw down. I don't know if they put forward all of their best players. They definitely rested some pitchers, but they definitely weren't letting the Jays off the hook easy.
No, no, they threw out their A lineup or at least as close as they could, um, and they were trying, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's a little bit of pride, and it's a little bit of like I said, really trying to force the Jays to make a mistake or to just put them in a bad spot ahead of what everyone expected at the time to be a Blue Jays Tampa wild card game or series.
Well, we don't need to build this up anymore. So Texas goes on to defeat the Seattle Mariners Saturday night, and the Jays confirm a playoff spot at that point. We didn't know at that point which spot they would be in, but with the Seattle Mariners loss, they did make the playoffs, and that was key because in game number 3, Obviously once the that playoff spot is confirmed, uh, the Jays kind of mix it up a bit, throw out a AAA pitcher to start the game, who throws, I believe, 4 innings and gave up 9 earned runs. So he was just there to kind of, you know, just
Yeah.
try to shoulder the weight of some innings to keep it away from some of some of the better guys. But the Seattle Mariners actually won on Sunday, so it wasn't like the Seattle Mariners just didn't go down without a fight. But with the Jays win, the Astros win, and the Mariners win, so Texas losing, the Toronto Blue Jays end up in the third wild card position, Dustin. And we had kind of talked about this, where do we want to be? We kind of just assumed that they would end up in the second wild card spot. And, well, they're in the third wild card spot heading to Minnesota tomorrow.
Yeah, and I kind of said at the time that hey, maybe you want to face Tampa. I mean, given their the series that we had against them, um, the series before New York, when we have Gosman, Barrios, and Bassett on the bump for Tampa against Tampa. I mean, that's probably I like that chance. I like our chances in that spot. Um, but uh, I don't know. Now looking at the final postseason picture and the brackets, it seems like a little bit of a kind of a smoother ride. I mean, facing Minnesota. I mean, not to take anything away from the Twins. They're a good team. We'll talk more about them, but not having to go through Tampa and Baltimore, which for the Jays have been kind of just really rough times this season. Having to only see one of those two, possibly not even one of those two. Maybe Texas comes through and takes them out for us. And, if we get to the ALCS, hey, you got to beat the best to get to the World Series. But, I like the Blue Jays' chances against the Twins. I like their chances against Houston and in the DS. So I think I'm happy about it. I think, you know, Blue Jays Twins is a really good series. I think, not just Blue Jays and Twins fans will be watching that series, but I think there's a lot of sort of just baseball fans. I was watching Talking Baseball, which is a YouTube show that I watch. They're Yankees fans there, but they were saying that this is probably the series that's the most kind of exciting, or at least has the
Well,
potential to be that.
have you looked across the wild card round? I was actually watching a video with Adnan Verk, which I will share with you
Okay.
after the show, and he's with MLB Network, but he was laughing about the ESPN execs trying to figure out who are you gonna put in the primetime slot, and really they had to put the Phillies in the primetime spot because you
Jesus.
have, right, like you have all, like it's well, you don't have there's no Yankees, there's no Red Sox, there's no Mets,
Right.
right? So the Dodgers are like they've
They've
got a
got a
bye,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
The Braves have a bye, right? So
Houston has a
all
bye.
of these
Yeah.
Houston has a bye, like all of these like big market teams, you got nothing. And so, the Jays are going to be playing at 4:30. Not the most ideal, but I'm going to see what I can do. Uh, Catch the first pitch on that one. But yeah, he was kind of laughing at the what the execs were going through trying to plan out this wild card route, because it's kind of ooh, you got like Milwaukee and Toronto and Miami and and Minnesota and like all these like super like small market
And
teams, or
Tampa.
or
Yeah.
Canadian teams, or Tampa, right? Like so I it was a bit humorous. I would say, so in soccer, we would call this like a fortunate draw, and because in a lot of on that sport, they have a lot of like draws where you pick out of a hat or whatever, and the bracket is built that way, and you know that's kind of actually an important thing in that sport because you might get a bunch of teams really good teams all packed to one side of the bracket, and
Yeah.
that might be your path to the final, right? And I think the way this is setting up now, I think we need to not get ahead of ourselves. As we've said, you know, dozens of times during this year, this 2023 Toronto Blue Jays team doesn't do anything easy, and so I don't expect it to be easy. But right now, I think facing Minnesota, like on the face of it, it's the team with the least amount of wins who won the weakest division in the AL, and I don't see how that's a bad thing. Coming out of that Tampa series, you did say, I wouldn't mind facing Tampa, and I totally agreed with you. Coming out of this last series, uh,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
I'm good with Minnesota. Now
Yeah,
saying
but
that
you know
they
what? In that weekend series against Tampa, you had Kikuchi and Ryu pitching two of those games that we lost. Um,
true.
and then like a what's it called, like a AAA pitcher. But like yeah, those guys, none of those guys are pitching in this series. But you're right. I mean, Tampa Bay is a dangerous team. Uh, you know, only one of Texas, Tampa Bay, and Baltimore are going to make it out of that side of the bracket.
Mm-hmm.
That's good for the Blue Jays. I mean, those three teams have had the Blue Jays numbers this season, no matter who's pitching. Um, so yeah, I think that's like you said, a fortunate, you know, way that
Draw.
this yeah. Well,
In
in
this
this
case,
case,
it's
it's
not a
not a draw,
draw,
but
but
it's
yeah,
fortunate that
fortunate
we kind of
outcome.
have that. Yeah, exactly. Um, but not to throw too much cold water. I don't want to take away anything from the Twins. You're right that they're uh, a good or a weak division. They got the least amount of wins, but you know, one thing that's concerning is that they've had um, Kevin Gosman's kind of number. They seem to have figured out a way to identify his splitter and lay off of it. We talked about it. I think he's had at least two starts against him. Maybe this year and maybe one last year, maybe two this year. I forget. But where they just seem to like just spit on his splitter and crank his fastball. I mean, one thing they do well is hit fastballs. Um, so that's a little bit of a concern there. Like if there's any game that we want to win, it's game one with Gosman on the bump. And that's one team that's kind of had his number.
Well, let's talk about the pitching. I guess there's not really a whole lot to talk about because I think we know who's going to pitch. Obviously, Kevin Gosman in game number one. I guess we can discuss like who do you think because obviously game number three is quote unquote if necessary. Who do you think should get game number two?
It's tough. I mean, I I'd love to see Bassett get it. I think just he's got you know that kind of uh, I don't know what it is. The je ne sais quoi. There's just some kind of. I think he would be just really good, bear down in a playoff, and he'd be good at that second game. If we happen to lose that first game, it's a super important must win. And if we win that first game, then there's no one better than him to sort of get that second win and just put him away. But I mean, Barrios has been solid this year, so I mean, it's kind of a 2 and 2A kind of thing. I kind of think that what they're gonna do is just leave it in the order that it's been.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I have a feeling that Barrios is gonna go game two, and we'll have Bassett there, and that if we get there, must win game three, and I'm okay with that too.
Well, I'm gonna say that I prefer Chris Bassett in game number two, and I will tell you why. So Kevin Gosman, as you touched on, has not had the greatest amount of success against the Minnesota Twins. Kevin Gausman is essentially a two pitch pitcher,
Hmm.
and what you would be doing is coming back with Chris Bassett the next game, who is what, like a seven pitch pitcher. So you'd kind of be really throwing someone out in the next start that has a completely different style.
Yeah,
I'm not going to suggest that Barrios is similar to Gosman. He seems to use a few more pitches, but it's not quite to the scale that Chris
it's a
Bassett.
different profile.
Yeah, it's a different profile, a little bit more velocity. But Chris Bassett just he almost will throw anything at any time. He was throw earlier in the year he was throwing like high sinkers, which is like it's kind of like it sounds almost oxymoron ish, where it's like, what do you mean? A sinker's supposed to go down, so you would throw it down. No, he would throw it up, and then it would just catch the top of the zone. So I really like Chris Bassett. He's just like such a professional. He's just like he's just a guy who like lives and breathes baseball. As soon as he's done his start, he seems to be just like talking with people about pitches
Yeah,
and what he sees, and I don't know. I just love that. I love that about him. I do think you are correct in that I do think Barrios will go, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. Former twin Jose Barrios.
yeah. I mean, you got a good point there. I think I saw something earlier. I was watching some stuff, some previews, and they were saying that Minnesota is one of the teams I mentioned earlier that they hit the fastball really well, but what they don't do is they don't hit curveballs really well. So, I think they were saying that they're like one of the worst, if not the worst, in the league in curveball batting average against. So, yeah, I mean, Bassett would be just another reason why, he would be a great option for game two, or to get him definitely pitching in this series. Um, so, I think, like I said, and like you said, I think it's kind of either or. But yeah, I'd like to see a Gosman Bassett um, start.
So in terms of the lineup, I think really it's deciding how many pitchers you're going to take. And Dustin, why don't you tell me how you would approach this?
Um, well, I guess let's run. What do you mean? The like 12 or
So
13 pitchers?
yeah, so basically, so last year they took 13 pitchers and
Yeah.
13
Okay.
outfield players. And so basically the decision is, do you take 13 pitchers again, in case maybe you have a game that goes, a little haywire and you need more pitchers, or do you take 12 pitchers and you have an extra position player? I think if they were
I would
playing
go with 12.
Tampa, I would go with 12 as well. I think if they were playing Tampa, I can see an argument for the third having that another pitcher because, you get a game, go like I was listening to the same that the Letters podcast talking about, you know, think
Yeah, I
about the
heard that
worst
same
case
one.
scenario. Yeah, worst case scenario, you get like a 13 inning game number one and you only have 12 pitchers and you're like, ooh, we're gonna have a rough go of this going forward. I think with the Twins, I don't know. I just see that of less of an issue, and I think you do. I think you do 12 pitchers and 14 outfielders, which I think kind of takes a little bit of the discussion out of who you're going to bring, because if you only have 13 outfield players, essentially one of Santiago Espinal, Cam Eden, Davis Schneider, one of them is it wouldn't be going in that case.
Yeah, and yeah, those are the bubble guys, I guess. And I think, man, you want all of them. I mean, for me, if you were gonna take 13, I kind of think you just, I don't know. Cam,
So okay, so let's say John Schneider does and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that John Schneider said, I did this last year, I'm going to do it again this year. Like, he does also seem like, a guy that he puts his pants on with his right leg first, right? And that's how he does it, kind of thing, right? So
right?
I
Yeah.
wouldn't be crazy surprised saying that. I think he's going to do the 12-14. I of those three, Dustin, uh,
Mm.
who would it, like? Let's say they do 13-13. Who would you exclude?
That's a tough one, right? Cam Eaton, you want there. He's going to be your stolen base, pinch runner. You know, Lord knows we have some slow guys on the base pass and Kirk and
Belt.
maybe Belt. So it'd be nice to have him in there. So and man, I'd hate to leave David Schneider off the roster. So I kind of feel like for me, Espinal's the odd guy out in that spot. I mean, there's what he brings to the table. I think he's got a good bat. I think he's kind of a well-rounded person, but I think we can get that out of Biggio, who's been fairly hot lately, and Whit Merrifield, who's got some experience. He's kind of a veteran guy, so I would leave Espinal out, but it's tough. What
Well,
about you?
okay, so I I have a hard time with this too because I think all three bring something completely different to the table. So Cam Eden, obviously he's a pinch runner. He could be the Dalton Pompey of 2023,
Exactly.
right? I think David Schneider brings power, but he has had a rough last couple weeks. He's really not been hitting at all. Um, and
He had a
Cynthia,
pretty good game that last game there, I think.
oh, okay. Well, I will take that for face value. I like David Schneider a lot. But the other thing is that Santiago Espinal would like he's essentially the short. He's the backup shortstop essentially. So
Right.
if you drop him, you have Kevin Biggio as your backup shortstop,
Biggio short. Yeah,
and
that
that
no,
that
that's
like
tough.
worries me a little bit and defensively. So it like I don't know. I think I think if you're only going with 13, I'd leave out Cam Eden.
Yeah.
And because well, if and that's only if you're going with 13. I just don't think you can have a player that because he's not going to come off the bench and shouldn't come off the bench to pinch hit, right? Like that's not what his purpose is for. And I think you need every single bat that's on there. You need to be able to come in and possibly come in late in the game and possibly get a hit.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, and
and this
this
is
is
why I
why I
think you
go with
take 14, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it just makes the most sense, and you
Yeah, and
cover all your bases.
the strength of this team is its pitching and its bullpen and I mean, who's the guy left out? Nate Pearson. Like who's not on this team if we
Well, Jay
take
Jackson
12?
got DFA'd on Sunday, so
Right. So
so he's
I don't
he's
know.
he's
I
on the
think
way
that's
out. I
tough.
think Pearson's on the outside looking in as well.
And obviously, Hyunjin Ryu,
Yeah,
um,
Hyunjin Ryu is 100% not going to be
not
on
good.
this
Right.
roster. Like he's not going to start. There's absolutely no point of him taking up any sort of roster spot.
Right.
So I don't know. I think they take 14. I think that makes most sense, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know when they announced the rosters. I don't know about you, but I was like checking all day today to like see if there was like some kind of update, and of course there wasn't. So that's how it is. But looking
They don't want to
forward
give
to.
the Twins time to game plan too much.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm assuming though. I'm
Not
assuming
that.
there's a deadline, right? So there's a
Right.
deadline. Major League Baseball says by such and such a time you need to send us your roster of who's going to be appearing, and all teams will have to have it in by whatever that time is. And I'm guessing we're going to wake up tomorrow and probably find out. But yeah, we'll. I guess we'll see. Now, Dustin, I think the final component of this episode is a prediction. Can you give me one?
Well, I filled out my bracket the earlier this morning, so uh, I guess do you want me to just go through what I think the Jays are going to do
I specifically this series, right?
this series?
I'm
Oh,
give me
okay,
a
this
prediction
series.
for this series.
All right. I think the Jays win this series. I think we do it in 2 games. I think Gosman throws a gem, 7 scoreless. the bullpen shuts it down. We squeak out 2 or 3 runs, and I think like again, Bassick just baffles them in the second game. I'm assuming he's going to go the second game, or if either or, I think Barrios can do that as well. So I think they get it done in two. I think they really want this, and there's a lot of veterans on this team that can just. I think the curse is lifted. That's what I'm going to say.
Well, I'm gonna say they're gonna win as well. I'm gonna say it's gonna be in 3 games because you know what, the Jays don't do anything easy,
They never did,
and
right?
I think for any sort of push towards the World Series, I think those wheels are gonna get going slow, and or at least slower than maybe we'd hope. And I think it's a 2-1 series win. They take it in Game 3, and then they would go on to face the Houston Astros. Dustin, I wanted to leave you with a thought, and I want your thoughts on this because I was thinking earlier today that the Toronto Blue Jays are the champion of this city's heart. And the reason I say that is, everybody listen, the Leafs are popular, don't get me wrong. But that relationship is like it's an abusive relationship, right? So when you're happy and it's going well, you're like, "Oh, okay, this is good." But when the Jays do well, this city like like starts foaming at the mouth, and it is
Right.
awesome, right? And I'm so looking forward to playoff baseball. Obviously we had some last year, and we thought we were gonna have a bit more than we, ended up having. But yeah, I think this team it's something about this team that the when they do well, and it is a little bandwagonish at times, which wish it was in some of those key games, the Texas Rangers series, I was looking for a bit more gumption, but I think the fans are going to be showing up, and I think the city, even though there isn't going to be a home game, I think the city is going to be buzzing all week.
I hope so. I think that I agree. This is a great baseball city. And when the Jays are doing well, they show up, and the attendance this year has really kind of shown that. Um,
Three
and
million.
yeah, it's crazy. What a good team will do, bring the fans out. So yeah, I agree with that. This time of year is my favorite, not only for playoff baseball, there's just the weather and all the other things that go along with it. So yeah, let's extend that as long as we can, and go Jays, go!
Go Jays, go! All right, well we'll leave it at there, Dustin. Thank you very much for joining me.